Welcome to a very special episode of App Stories. We're going to talk to everybody today about our first impressions of WWDC and the Keynote. This episode is brought to you by SetApp, who is sponsoring all of our WWDC coverage this week. Thanks to them for doing that. We're going to talk about all the OSs today, but also what it was like to be at the event itself, and also to go to... And we're also going to talk about the Vision Pro. That was Federico with his iPad causing some echoes there. I'm going to start again with Federico because he was new to the event this year. This is his first time. Federico, what was your morning like?
So, besides the fact that I've been feeling all week like it's just nice to be able to be in person again. First time I'm traveling 4 years, and I hadn't seen a lot of folks in a long time at this point since 2019. So there's been that general feeling for the entire week so far. And being at Apple Park, it hits different because I kept saying to Mike as we were finally walking into Apple Park together, I kept saying to Mike how it feels... It looks fake in person, right? It looks like this impossibly sort of majestic building that looks like a render in real life. And there's this contrast between the modern sort of marvel of this building and the surrounding nature. I don't know if you stopped to... have you tried and smell the plants and the flowers, John?
I can't say that I have, but it is really interesting when you go into Apple Park. You do really still feel like you're outside because of the way they circulate the air from the exterior into the building. It really feels fresh and like it does not feel like you're in an office building. And especially when you're looking over Cafe Max, where there are a bunch of trees growing because the thing's 4 stories. And so these are relatively large trees. It just feels like you're outside, even though you're inside an office building, next to an elevator bank.
Yeah. The doors of Cafe Max are as impressive as people have been describing them for a long time. They're like these 3-4 story high glass doors, and we didn't see them being open, but still, they're quite a sight. And as we were walking in, _David Smith told us, we were in a little group together. John was there and Mike was there. David Sparks was there. _ told us, pay attention to all the rounded corners you can find in Apple Park. And you may have seen these rounded corners, right? You may have seen the staircases that are the same at the Apple Park Visitor Center. And you know that Apple has a thing for rounded corners. But since _ told me that, I started really paying attention to these rounded corners everywhere. And so when I was in a briefing today, I was in a briefing room, and I looked down at this coffee table in front of, we were sitting on this couch in these chairs, and I looked down at the coffee table, and it had these perfect rounded corners, both on the surface of the table and the table legs had rounded corners. And I was like, damn, now I see the rounded corners everywhere.
Yeah, it's really impressive. It's really impressive. Well, we got to actually start talking about some of the OSs because we've got a lot of ground to cover. We started our morning out in the baking sun, but fortunately the sun shifted pretty quickly, and we were sitting in the shade as things got started, kind of back towards the back of the crowd because the developers have the good seats, and the press were kind of in the back, and we were sitting with a bunch of people from Relay and other places. And they opened it up with Tim Cook and Craig Federighi, who came out on stage and really just introduced the video. That was the last we saw of them. And they launched right into iOS. And I got to say, I thought that there were some really interesting, nice quality of life type features here. I think more than anything, I'm excited about the messages features. I mean, there's a lot in there that's going to make responding to people a lot easier. I like the idea of having stickers everywhere. It's kind of sad that Stickerbook got Sherlock today, which is a really good third-party app for making stickers that I use quite a bit. But it's nice that all these things are built into the system too.
Yeah, I just created a bunch of stickers from photos, and I do believe that sticker drop is pretty much done. I mean, when you get this kind of integration, and Apple takes care of isolating the subject, and they support effects for that you can sort of apply to the images that you turn into stickers, and they support animated sort of stickers as well, I believe. So that's fun. And the quality of life improvements in messages, I mean, the new reply gesture, I mean, it's basically been lifted from WhatsApp. That is, you swipe to the right and a reply button appears, and you can just reply to a message like that, and you no longer need to tap and hold and hit reply. That was one of the best interactions of WhatsApp, and they're now doing it in messages, and I think that's a really cool thing. I'm curious to try. I don't know if you guys, Alex, you've been working on a messages article. What else should we consider about messages? What else is coming?
Oh, sticker reactions, man. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. This has been the main feature I feel like that I've been missing in messages, especially since I use, Discord and Slack a lot. And just being able to react with any emoji or even custom emojis is, I feel like it's become so central to how I communicate on the internet with a lot of my communities. And then every time I go back to messages and I'm typing in there, and I can only react with these like 5 gray, sad, static icons. It feels like it's like cutting off a way that I communicate. And so now it looks like you can tap and hold on a message, and there's a new button that says Add Sticker. And if you use that button instead of using the 5 icons are still there for tapbacks, as Apple calls them. But now you can add a sticker as well, and you can they only showed it really briefly, but it looks like you can pick from any sticker. And so you can probably do custom stickers as well. And basically it looks like the whole feature is going to be there. And that's, I think, the part of messages that I'm the most excited for from what I've seen.
Yeah, so Jonathan in the chat asked if I'm going to start reviewing stickers again. I think probably not, but I will be interested to see if the 200 plus sticker packs that I have from back in the old days of doing that are going to wreck my ability to do this. It'll be interesting to see how that works.
Yeah, I just created an emoji sticker. Totally worked. First try. By the way, your existing iMessage stickers are still in there. And there's this, I mean, look at this. There's this giant picker in messages now where it's really like I am looking at iPadOS 17, which I have on my iPad Pro already. iOS 17 is installed. It's actually installing right now on my phone. I'm looking at the Apple logo on my phone. They got this giant picker where they simplified basically access to apps. It's no longer like this thin toolbar on top of the keyboard. It's now this popover with access to your camera, photos, stickers, cache, which I cannot use because Apple Pay Cache is not available for me. Audio, location, and more. And more would be your previous apps, including Digital Touch.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there. That's pretty remarkable. What else should we talk about on iOS before we move on to iPadOS?
I think I was impressed by the Journal app. This is a topic we should probably revisit later on. It's coming later this year, and I get the feeling that it's not gonna be like an iOS 17 launch thing. Kind of getting a freeform vibe from it. When they say later this year, usually it means after the fall. I was impressed, first of all, by the idea, like a journaling app, like the idea of practicing gratitude and writing down what you've done, how you feel. That's a great idea that we also see reflected in stuff like mood and emotion tracking in the Health app. But in terms of app stories content, what we should be on the lookout for is the new Suggestions API that will allow third-party developers to integrate with Journal. And so if you're a third-party developer and you want to, donate an activity that the user did, you will be able to say, for example, assuming Overcast adds support for it, you will be able to log in your journal, I listened to this episode of App Stories on June 6th, for example. And so I think that's got a lot of potential for developers too, as another way to sort of expose their app's content to the users.
Right. And we're getting that standby feature, which is another one that I think is kind of cool. I mean, Jonathan just asked about this in the chat as well. I was very skeptical about this, but I do kind of like the way it's been presented. I think especially on a nightstand at night, if we're an alarm clock or sitting on a desk where you're monitoring maybe the weather or your calendar or other things that are showing you different little tidbits of information, maybe, I guess a task manager would be another one that would work really well for that. The kind of things that you put on your lock screen already, but you'll have more space to do it because it'll be horizontal and they'll be a lot bigger. This is really kind of one of the biggest themes I think today is widgets everywhere, which is something I want to really think about more because there's really going to be widgets just about everywhere at this point. This episode of App Stories and all of our WWDC coverage this year is brought to you by SetApp. SetApp is the first subscription-based service for macOS, iOS, and web apps developed by MacPaw and released in 2017 that offers developers a source of predictable monthly revenue and seamless user experiences with commissions as low as 10%. SetApp is an efficient way to distribute macOS, iOS, and web apps. Your users get hassle-free access to powerful apps with no ads or hidden fees. Developers get an additional way to sell their apps too. SetApp has everything from design solutions and software development tools to photo editing. SetApp has over 240 macOS, iOS, and web apps in total for its users, and new apps are being carefully handpicked every day. The SetApp team takes care of things like payments, update mechanisms, content marketing, and helpful support to help developers work independently and adopt the subscription model hassle-free. Also, SetApp's rating and review feature allows developers to gather valuable feedback about their apps from SetApp users, bringing their products to the next level. SetApp shares 70% of each user's fee among developers of the applications that a particular customer uses. In other words, SetApp calculates developers' shares of profits on a per-user basis separately. On top of the 70%, SetApp gives a guaranteed 20% of user fees to the partner who brought that particular user to SetApp. To sum up, SetApp vendors may receive up to 90% of the revenue from a user's fee every month. SetApp is a strong network of software consumers waiting for the next iOS, macOS, or web app to power their projects. Looking for a new audience for your product? Join SetApp, bringing your product to new users directly. Grow your app with SetApp by visiting setapp.com/developers today to learn more and sign up. Again, that URL, which will be in the show notes too, is setapp.com/developers. Our thanks to SetApp for their support of the show.
Speaking of which, can we just let Alex talk about WatchOS for like 15 minutes? Because I feel like WatchOS 10, massive update on the 10th anniversary of, or what kind of, well, it's version 10, it's not the 10th anniversary, but still a milestone of a release for WatchOS. And they're sort of blending the existing Siri watch face into any watch face with what they call the Smart Stack, basically the new widget integration. And those are going to be also interactive widgets, not as interactive as, for example, on the iPhone, but you will get some form of interaction for timers, for music, for podcasts. So how do you feel about not just the watch face, but also like all the app redesigns?
Yeah, man, it's been a long time coming for WatchOS. This is one of the things that I've talked about when we've talked through what we want to see in WatchOS is just actually using some of the screen real estate that's available from swiping up or side to side. And it doesn't look from the videos like they've used the side to side for anything new other than watch faces yet. But now when you spin the digital crown from the bottom of the screen, up comes a stack of widgets. And yeah, it does look like they took the interface from the Siri watch face and now made it available underneath any watch face, which I think is always how that should have been. Like the Siri watch face had so little going on as a watch face, but then it brought functionality that it felt like the watch was missing. And so it's really great to see, it kind of seemed to us like they abandoned the Siri watch face right after dropping it. They never came back to it again, even though it had good ideas. And I feel like, that was 5 years ago or more. And people still will be like, oh yeah, I remember the Siri watch face. It had some good ideas. but it fell down on being a watch face, I think. And so this really feels like they've found the best of both worlds here. And now you can pick any watch face that you want. And I also feel like people might be a little more free to play around with more of the fun watch faces because they're no longer kind of limiting themselves in the utility of their watch based on which watch face they select. So, I think we all saw this Snoopy watch face that's got crazy stuff going on. The Snoopy's like playing with the hands and things and like tossing like crumpled up papers that bounce around on the hands as they spin around, like things like that are really fun. But in previous years, I'm not going to use that face. Most people aren't going to use that face because it doesn't do anything that your smartwatch does. But now it seems like things like that are more fun and a little less utility might be more of an okay option for people, who actually want to use their watch to still select, because you just spin the digital crown and you've got all of your watch functionality right at hand. So I think that sounds amazing. We'll have to see how well it works. I still have some concerns about the sorting of the widgets and whether, are they actually going to be what I want to see every time it comes up, or is Apple's machine learning not going to be surfacing, what I want, in which case it's a little less useful. So we'll have to see how that goes, but it looks great from afar, and it seems like the app redesigns have a really nice new design language where they're putting, basically it looks like they're putting complications in the corners of other apps. And so I think that blends the whole watch's interface together better. Now people from the watch face to the actual app interfaces, like the core center of your watch is the interface of stuff that you're going to use, but then there's also things on the edges that are extra functionality. So that looks like a really good new design language too. And I'm really excited to get my hands on this and see how it is in practice.
Did you see the widget that is like a widget that is a collection of complications?
Yes.
That you frequently use? What's the deal with that? So it's a widget for complications.
Yeah. It's a little bit like a widget of widgets, and
it's a widget of widgets,
right? And the whole stack is a kind of widgets of widgets, which is very similar to what I think we've already got on the iPhone. And that, I don't know, I've not always been super happy with how those smart stacks work. I usually turn that feature off, but I think I'd be more likely to give it a try on the watch, where I'm much more space constrained and I have less that I can do myself to organize it myself.
Do you think a widget stack can open another widget stack? You can just have widgets. You can make like the Launch Center Pro of widgets.
Yeah. Daniel in Discord said the best widget is the widget, which is pretty accurate actually. But this idea of widgets everywhere. So iPad gets them. They're doing. I just put 17 on my iPad. The Apple logo is still on my iPhone, and that is not a good sign. We'll see. On the iPad, they're doing widgets on the lock screen. So you get this sidebar on the left side of the lock screen when in landscape, and I believe they are underneath the clock when in portrait. At least that's what the splash screen told me. And so you can have these widgets that are sort of translucent, like on iOS, but you get more sizes on iPadOS. So, for example, on the lock screen on the iPad, you get the square widget, which you do not get on iOS. So, I'm really keen to see sort of my only concern with the iPad, I guess, is that widgets on the iPhone, especially the glanceable ones, they make a lot of sense when you have an always-on display. When you don't have an always-on display, I do believe that the utility of lock screen widgets is possibly diminished a bit, which is why I guess I'm not surprised to see Apple doing a shortcuts launcher widget, which John and I were just testing out, and it doesn't work, but it's there. It's called quickly run one of your shortcuts. So maybe on the iPad, we'll have more sort of interactive and launcher style widgets. And lastly, they're doing widgets on the Mac.
Yes, we are actually getting something that I've wanted for a very long time, was getting those widgets out of the notification center where they were just kind of buried under notifications and too hard to get to. It's neat to me. I haven't had a chance to try this yet. I was kind of hoping that you'd have an option to float them above other windows, which it doesn't look, at least from the keynote, like you can do. But I do think it's really neat how they've made them fade into the background when you open a window of a particular app. I think that looked like it worked really well, where it tints based on the wallpaper you're using to create a contrast so that you can still see the information in the widget, but it's secondary to the window that you've got open. And the example they used was somebody opening up the Mail app and having the widgets kind of fade into the background. And I think that I like that. I mean, I definitely want to have a weather widget on my Mac and a calendar widget and maybe, my today tasks and things like that. There's a bunch of things there that I'd really like to try. And I think, I've found myself more and more using apps that kind of create their own sorts of widgets for Mac OS already. And I've already taken to using the right-hand side of my screen a little bit like the Stage Manager on the left-hand side, doing my work in the center and then using the sidebars of the screen for Stage Manager and widgets. And this will make that even easier.
Yeah. So those widgets on macOS, my understanding is that they get dimmed, obviously, as soon as there's a window in front of them. But when you click on the desktop, they get the tint again. And I want to see, for example, if I assign like a gesture or a hot corner on macOS to show the desktop, will that become an easy way for me to say, sort of hide all my windows and instantly see the active version of all my widgets on the desktop, sort of like a dashboard basically? And will it work with those utilities that hide icons and junk from your desktop? Because essentially at that point, if all of that works, right? If you can hide icons for like screenshots and files from your desktop and you put widgets there, and then you assign a keyboard shortcut or a gesture to temporarily hide all your windows, you have basically replicated dashboard.
Yeah, you really have. You really have. And I think that Apple's finally doing a lot of interesting things with the desktop that it really hasn't before. And I think it all goes back to the early days when they first started letting you kind of automatically clean up your desktop. So it wasn't necessarily a jumble of files, which a lot of people do by, doing things like the stacks and the organizing things that way. Federico, what do you think about Stage Manager on the iPad?
I am happy so far. I think that the general vibe is that they took the criticisms from last year and they worked on it. So I put it on my iPad, and I can tell you right away that some of like the key things that I wanted to see are here. So you can basically do freeform resizing of application windows now. It doesn't have that weird sort of resize, size class based animation anymore. And you can freely place them whatever you want. I mean, obviously, if a window goes out of the bounds of the screen, it bounces back. But I'm going to show it to you now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there's still obviously like a small sort of rail-based system underneath, but it's like the rails have gotten much denser. And so you have a lot more options when it comes to resizing and placing windows. And the best part, obviously, you can shift-click icons in the dock or window thumbnails in the strip to immediately add those windows to your current workspace. So shift clicking is something that I really wanted to have. It's now here. It doesn't work from Spotlight yet. So if you shift click an app result from Spotlight, it will not get added to the workspace in beta 1. But hey, that's my first feedback item right there. And next on my list, I want to try Stage Manager on an external display because I brought one with me. The beloved C4. The C-Force display is downstairs in my hotel room. We're going to try it, see what happens. I did not get, unfortunately, I did not get the audio stuff. So, well, that's not part of Stage Manager. I think, and after speaking with a few people, I get the sense that they took all the criticisms from last year. They understood, where I and other iPad users were coming from a place of, we're criticizing this because we really want to use it, not because we just want to, hate the feature. So I'm hopeful that we'll get, and I mean, right now in beta 1, we already got 3 of our wishes, and I think we're probably going to get more in the summer. So I'm feeling good so far.
Yeah, I think that from what the little I've seen, I mean, Federico is literally testing this out in the car as we were driving back from the visitor center, because he was at the State of the Union and I was back here with Alex. So I went and picked him up when he was finished, and he was resizing the windows at a stoplight, and it's buttery smooth. It doesn't do that weird size class kind of jerky thing between one size and another. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I guess we should mention a little bit about maybe FaceTime on the Apple TV. To me, that was a really surprising thing. I didn't really expect that. It makes a lot of sense given continuity camera, and it's a good reason why they have upped the chip power in the Apple TVs in the last iteration. That makes a lot of sense now. You can start a FaceTime call on your phone and then just kind of bring your phone close to the Apple TV like you do when you do the setup gesture, and it will transfer to your TV, and you can actually do those FaceTime calls on the TV with some sort of video playing in the background, whether it's a movie or a TV show or whatever. So it's another way to do SharePlay that's not on like an iPad or another device.
Yeah, and I think that one of the features I saw was FaceTime FaceTime messages. That's one of those features that it shows up, they demo it, and I'm sitting here thinking like, wait, is this never a thing that no one has ever done before? And it's like one of those features that just immediately, the moment you hear it, you're like, oh yes, how is this not already a thing? So many times when I get a FaceTime call, it's from family members because they're in the middle of something that I'm not in. Especially like I live, in Minnesota. Most of my family lives in Tucson. So a lot of times if they have some get together and they're trying to FaceTime me and I can't pick it up, I just miss whatever was going on. And it just sounds amazing that now they can just, in that situation, if I can't pick up, they can leave a video of whatever's going on, because those moments are not going to, wait around for the next time that the FaceTime, that I am available to get on FaceTime. So that seems incredible. I'm really looking forward to that.
All right. Is there anything else we need to cover? Obviously, we're gonna be coming back to a lot of content this week because I just got iOS 17 installed on my iPhone, and I can tell you, for example, that iMessage is not happy, saying that I'm signed out. So I'm gonna sign back in for iMessage. One of the things I noticed and that I really want to mention. Well, there's a couple of things that I want to mention before we wrap up. The first one, surprisingly so, we got internal linking in Notes. So you will now be able to refer to other notes in the Notes app, and a column view in Reminders. We got a column view Reminders that lets you have columns for different sections in your lists in the Reminders app. So that was pretty cool. But before we go, there's obviously, the elephant in the room. Vision Pro. We're also going to do some Q&A with members. Apple Vision Pro. So it's not called Reality Pro. It's not called XR. It's Apple Vision Pro. My first reaction, and I was telling this to some people after the keynote, is that it's such a rare opportunity, I think, to be able to go to an Apple keynote and see the next few years of your work, of your professional life, just laid out in front of you in advance. Because I do believe that Vision Pro, and not necessarily maybe this first one, but in general, this idea of spatial computing is what we'll likely be covering and doing for the next few years on Mac Stories. It's obviously, and watching the State of the Union and hearing Apple describe the technical foundation for it, it's clear they are all in on it. And I I think it's wild when a new Apple device and a new Apple platform somehow manages to exceed the best case scenario of the rumors, right? The rumors were saying, no, you will be able to use your desktop. And not only that, but you can look at your Mac with the Vision Pro and it recognizes the Mac and it puts a 4K display in your space. And they were talking about environments, and there's a whole suite of environments they will be able to be in. Like, I want to be in a forest, or I want to be at a lake, or I want to be, someplace else, and you will have that. So in all the aspects that we were sort of imagining this headset, I think from the hour or so that we got in the keynote, they went beyond all of those expectations.
Yeah, I think they really did. And I mean, there is a lot of it to me is going to be, we'll have to see how this thing actually works. We haven't had a chance to try it yet, but the tech from the demos, the text, if nothing else, seems to be incredibly sharp. And that's been a huge problem for other VR headsets. It looks as though they've got the computing power behind this thing to actually have a really good experience that isn't going to make you sick in 10 minutes when you're trying to, just tick off some tasks on your task manager or something. I'm really excited about it. I thought the eyes on the front of the thing was really surprising to me the way it was done. I think it was done better than I expected it ever could be done. I still think that in some circumstances, wearing this thing around the house with other people around is potentially kind of weird and creepy, but it's also very new at this point. I want to keep an open mind about it because I do feel like one of the things that was happening at this keynote was, we were talking about it before we started, is Apple's really trying to normalize what the interactions here are going to be like. And I think that that's something that, it's going to take real hands-on experience by a wide variety of people before we really get a sense for how true that is and how widely we would use this. Like I'm not sure about all the circumstances I would use such a thing. I would certainly use it by myself in my office with the shades drawn. I don't know if I would go to a co-working facility with it on or in an airplane, but I don't know. I mean, I'm going to keep an open mind about it and see how it goes. What do you think, Alex?
I think what impressed me the most about just their whole approach to this problem was how they very clearly approached everything from a human perspective. So this, if you look at some of the pretty much all of the competition, I think, in this space that's already been there or whatever, they all focus on the VR aspect of this primarily. It seems like they're focusing on you being in a virtual world that is not the space that you're in. And Apple has, I guess unsurprisingly, but still just in execution, I'm still surprised. They've clearly come at this from the perspective of, how do we do this as artificial reality primarily, and very primarily? It seems like VR, they obviously didn't even say that term, and it was more of something that you can kind of, slowly draw, a landscape around it to encompass your full vision. And then technically you're in VR, but that's not really, it's more of when you need to be blocking out your surroundings, but you're still kind of in the physical space. And I feel like the whole thing was around, you are in the space that you're in, and that is what this device is primarily intended to be. And from the eyes to, the putting the things in the room that you're in, I felt like all of it was just a very impressive and well thought out way to try to introduce this technology in. And there's obviously still going to be a lot of, uphill battles to fight here, just normalizing this kind of thing. You should be able to go to a co-working space and wear, and use whatever computer that you want to use. But obviously the first person to do that is going to be a weirdo. So there's definitely a big question of how long does this technology take to become normal to use? But to me, the working aspects of it make a lot of sense. And I feel like there's some more questions around the family aspects that they showed. I don't quite know that, a father is going to want to be wearing his VR glasses while he interacts with his children. that part I feel like is a little bit of a more shaky vision, but I think all the work stuff seemed fantastic. And I mean, even wearing it in your home, but when you're in work mode, not in family mode, I feel like that made a lot of sense.
Don't underestimate the goofiness of parents, Alex. They will do all sorts of things, goofy things with their kids. But one of the other things worth mentioning too, I think, are the realistic avatars that you kind of point the outside of the Vision Pro at your face, and it creates what looks like to me like would be a high-end NPC in a good video game. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think that looks pretty cool. That's probably, to me, that's the work with Unity right there, probably showing.
Also, they showed in the State of the Union that these digital personas that you will be able to create, right, of yourself, these photorealistic avatars. They didn't show this in the keynote, but they showed in the State of the Union how you will have these spatial personas, which are basically these floating heads that you will be able to use during FaceTime calls while wearing the Apple Vision Pro. And with all of that, you will also be able to use SharePlay. So imagine John and I wearing our headsets and sharing or collaborating, I guess, on an Apple Note, for example. And as I turn my head, I will see this like floating photorealistic John in 3D around me, in front of me, sort of peeking from the side. It sounds creepy, but I think when you wear the headset, the idea of remote presence will make up for it.
Yeah, I can just imagine you doing that and laughing, and Sylvia asking you what's going on, and you saying that John's floating head just did something funny. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us today. We are going to be back again tomorrow, probably.
We're going to the Apple Design Awards right now.
We are. Federico and I have a date with someone in PR to take us in a golf cart over to the ADAs.
No, I think we're going to walk, John.
Oh, yeah. All right. It's not that far anyway. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks again to SetApp again for sponsoring this episode of App Stories. We'll be back throughout the week. Tomorrow will probably be sometime in the morning Pacific time. So we will be back to you soon and talk to you later.
Ciao, John.
Ciao, Federico.
See you guys.